Thank you all so much for being here today. I really appreciate this full room and this wonderful audience. You are here understanding the Latino experience in Oregon, Latinx, which of course stands for Latino/Latina. So that's the new word for those of you that didn't know that, because it hasn't been too long. I thought it was a typo, and I was reviewing somebody's translation, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's a typo. And they're like, no, no, that's the new word. Latinx encompasses both Latinos and Latinas. It's like, okay, you learn something new every day. Well, this is our monthly coffee talk, but once a year we partner with our wonderful HINT group, Hispanic Interagency Networking Team. So we are a group of professionals that meet once a month, and we plan forums throughout the year. On the off months, we have what's called a HINT Hangout. So it's a really good group to get connected to. The HINT Hangouts are perfect venue if you want to network with Clackamas County professionals. It's not anything that is structured. It's a drop-in 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we have it over at Tacho's Restaurant right on Main Street here in Oregon City. And you bring information about your program or introduce yourself to the other community partners. It's a great way to meet other people that are doing great work in community service in our community. So, and then the forums are every other month. The next one we have is going to be in November. If you want more information about HINT, you can contact me and we can put you on our email list so you're up to date on all the wonderful things that are going on there. And I also want to thank Children, Youth, and Families for allowing us to partner with them every year to do something special for Hispanic Heritage Month. And this is going to be a great one. I have two wonderful speakers. Frances is going to go first. So Frances is a very special lady. I could probably be up here talking for the full 2 hours about her. She grew up in the 60s. She comes from a hardworking family that taught her values that have inspired her to do the work that she does today. Growing up poor and in the fields, she recalls how her and her siblings have dedicated themselves to helping the family by working in the agricultural fields, primarily in the grape fields in Delano, California, which is very dear and near to my heart because my family still work in the grape fields in Delano, California. So even though working under harsh conditions that all farm workers are exposed to, Frances maintained a positive and healthy attitude towards the work. And we were just reminiscing this morning about, but remember those taquitos that we always looked forward to when we were out in the fields, right? The fresh homemade flour tortilla, so that was the best. And so Frances' family became engaged and supported the efforts of what became to be known as the grape boycott. And the movement became history, led by a gentleman, Cesar Chavez. And Frances has a table with some great pictures and information, and a picture of her parents in that endeavor. So, and they were part of the United Farm Workers Union. And they even had to move at one point to the East Coast to inform people about the boycott and not to buy California grapes. So Frances has been employed with Oregon Human Development for the past 31 years. She has devoted herself to assisting farm workers by providing assistance through a program, and her devotion to her work and her compassion and understanding for the barriers that the farm worker community goes through makes her a unique individual and exemplifies her to the highest standards. And she's truly a wonderful woman. She is well known within the community, not just in Marion County, but I would say statewide. She's received a lot of awards and is connected to a lot of great organizations. And she's a board member of the Willamette Workforce Partnership Board, the Marion Polk Food Share, CASA of Oregon. She's a member of the President's Advisory Committee for Chemeketa Community College. And thousands of Oregon families have been given the opportunity to break intergenerational poverty because of her passionate and effective work with her with the farm workers in our community, including my family, because I would have to say that my family's success and mine personally is due in huge part to Francis. So I will turn it over to Francis Alvarado.
Thank you, Maria. I didn't realize she was going to read the whole thing because you told my story. Okay, well, thank you. Wow, this is a huge crowd, and so if I kind of stumble through words, it's because I'm not a really big talker, big groups, but I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit. I think Maria mentioned a little bit about who I am. ¿Verdad? I am originally from California. I did travel to Oregon when I was 16. That's how I met my no longer husband, but I met him when I was 16 when we worked in labor camps here in Oregon. So we moved that summer. I think it was in 1969. We lived in Monitor, St. Paul, and Woodburn. We lived with a couple of labor camps. So, you know, when we talk about my life, I mean, I've been there, you know, our family. We were, you know, I was considered a third generation migrant worker. My grandparents, venían de Texas. My mother was born and raised in Edinburgh, Texas. My dad comes from Zacatecas. And so that's how they met. Well, they were migrant workers. And so we traveled quite a bit. You know, I met mostly when I was growing up, it was mostly in California, except with that year in 1969, we came to Oregon because my dad heard that you could make a lot of money picking beans and strawberries and cucumbers, which we all know that's not really true. I think if all of us worked, I mean, we did, there's 8 of us in the family, yeah, we were bringing in a little bit, you know, under $100 a day, but look how many of us were there. There were 8 of us. So when you think about how much money we were making, we were probably making less than $20 a day, you know, when you consider how much. But that was our life. I mean, we traveled. I could tell you all the fruits and vegetables that I picked throughout California, Merced, Modesto, Delano, of course, and then in Oregon. So, yeah, my life has gotten me where I am today. That's why I continue working with farm workers. I can hardly, you know, it's important for me to share to them, you know, because sometimes they look at us and say, well, gee, what does she know? When we talk about their needs of housing and food and transportation and, you know, sometimes, you know, you have to be able to extend to them and relate a little bit about you so that you can understand them. And once I can share a little bit about who I am, and of course, you know, I have pictures and they can see some of the stuff I have in my office, they get to see a part of me that says, oh, you were a farm worker before and you've done this before. And I can say, yes. You know, so you're talking to somebody that knows the life, right? So that to me, that does make a big difference, you know. And then like Maria mentioned, you know, we were fortunate having lived in Delano. Most of the people there were very active when, you know, the movement of the United Farm Workers started in Delano. My father was very involved with the strike and all the marches. He was one of the ones that marched when they marched from Delano to Sacramento when they were first started. So the movement has a huge history. And I just wanted to share with you, those that are interested to know more about what was happening in the 60s and the 70s out in the fields, and what's this whole story about, you know, the movement and Cesar Chavez. And I wanted to post it, but those that are interested, you want to look at this webpage. It's called www.ufwstories.com. Open up the webpage, go to the stories, and there you're going to be able to read people that have shared their history, just like ours, about what they did for the union, what was their involvement with the movement back then. And you can appreciate, you know, a lot of what went on, you know, when we were talking about how to better the lives of farm workers. And not only, it wasn't just about basic rights, it's about living conditions and wages and having water. And you think about, you know, when did it all start? I don't know how it would be today if the movement really hadn't gotten to the point where, you know, we now have farm workers getting unemployment. That was so unheard of. You know, there was no work. Farm workers just waited till the season. When my parents, you know, they were very proud. it was very hard for them, for us, back then there wasn't the food stamps and the TANF and all the, needs that, services that are available today. And, and it just brings back a lot of memories when in the winter we didn't really have food. And it took a lot for my parents to go ask for welfare food, and to come back with the welfare food and them being so happy and us being happy because we were going to eat. That you don't never forget those kind of times, and so sometimes, it's relating to our clients, it just brings back a lot of memories. But going back to my involvement with the union, we were gone 2 years. Cesar asked all of us that were in big meeting, and you'll hear about some of the stories, but he said the only way people we're going to have the farmer, the rancheros and the contratistas and the big farms sign contracts with the union is to make them understand, the movement and why we were doing it. So that's where the great boycott started. And later on, there was the lettuce. And later on, it was other things. But the biggest was the grape and the lettuce boycott. We were gone 2 years, and there's a little history in that wall where my parents, we were in St. Louis, Missouri, and we were the farm worker family that came to boycott. We started in Columbus, Ohio. Then we went to St. Louis, Missouri, Kansas City, and Dallas, Texas. So we were one of 200 families or more. I think it was 300 families. Never been out of Delano. Never had heard of other cities. I went to an all-white school. I went to an all-black school. And it was during that period of time there was a lot of riots in the schools. I don't know if you remember back in the late 60s, early 70s, there was quite a bit of turmoil. And so it was very different for me because in Delano, we hung out only with Latinos, other Latinos. We didn't hang out with anybody else. So to be thrown in an environment where we had to inseminate and learn how to, communicate with other people that looked different than us. So that was really different. And I'll have to share this with you because it really kind of, not funny, but it was something that we went through where we were really, like when we went to an all-white school, I mean, back then there wasn't that many Latinos in Columbus, Ohio. And they heard about this farm worker Mexican family that came to town. When we started school, I got surrounded by all these girls, really pretty blonde girls, and I was like, oh my God. And all they wanted to know is, say something in Spanish. And say something, because they were like, because they loved hearing me talk in Spanish. But they wanted to know what I ate. And how did you learn to speak English so good? And I was like, I couldn't get it because I thought, I'm an American citizen. I was born in, Hanford, California. So they thought I came from Mexico. Because when you were Latina, you were Hispanic American, or whatever you want to be called, Mexican American, they were just surprised how well my English was. And that's why I was like, I don't get it. So, but then again, when we went to an all-black school, they did the same thing. They surrounded me like I was just like this, celebrity almost, but they wanted to know what I ate. Can you say something in Spanish? Because you guys sound so nice. I love the way it sounds and all this. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get used to this. But it was an experience, It was an experience, and I think that I'm glad we did it. It took a lot out of the family to be pulled out of your house for 2 years and to work for the union and to learn how to picket, to experience discrimination, experience racist attitudes in the grocery stores, to be spit on, to be called a communist. We went through all of that. And all we were doing is like, we just want to be able to boycott race to tell people we're fighting for our rights. Farm workers don't they know how we live? Don't they understand farm workers? And we had to educate a lot of people about that. And so it was a huge, story. So we came back, I graduated. I went back to Delano. I graduated that same year. And the following year, Remember the guy I met when I was 16? Well, yeah, I married him. And I really didn't know him. We just wrote letters. So it was one of those kind of relationships where you just wrote. But I had two beautiful sons. I have 7 grandchildren. No longer married to that man, but that's okay. I have, like I said, 7 beautiful grandchildren, and who I am is, I continue working with farm workers. I work with the state. I had different jobs, throughout my life, and I worked with the state. And I remember seeing this article, they were looking for an intake worker working with farm workers. And I always knew that I had that passion to want to continue going back to that kind of work, working with farm workers. And I debated, should I leave a good, nice, PERS job, and with the state, and lived only 5-10 minutes away from my house. I lived in West Salem. I worked downtown. And this job was in Woodburn, which is, round trip, we're talking 40 miles. So I debated, but I applied, and here I am 31 years later, still doing, working with the farm workers and continue to be active with the population, maybe in a different, responsibility because, I'm not picketing, I'm not boycotting, but I am providing services to farm workers, and, and I that is my passion. And I love giving classes. I love seeing farm workers have them make an impact and make a difference, And one of the things that I should have brought today, because we have so many success stories of farm workers that have achieved. And we have my other staff here, Christy, works at our main office, and she worked in Hillsborough. And Hillsborough had beautiful, just wonderful stories, of our clients that came through the program who, it's amazing, when you give somebody an opportunity, something they've never had, and all it takes is sometimes a little support, a little money, a little, chance to be able to go to school and be something better, and then for them to take off. And Maria mentioned, her family, her mother. I mean, we can share some of the success stories, and I go back and I see where they are today, and it's like, wow, it's amazing. I've had one girl who actually was an executive director of Mano a Mano, Martha Calderon. I don't know if you know her, but she used to run Mano a Mano in Salem. She started with OHTC many years ago. She got her GED, and she remembers, and she said, to this day, I was a single mom. I needed help, and I didn't know who to turn to, and I qualified for OHTC and Independence. I got my GED. And here she was running a whole program many years later, Verdad, but you hear about some of these that were able to open doors and just grow, I also wanted to also mention that one of the things that I was one of the interviewers for this book. Has anybody seen this book before? Okay. Yeah, this book was, I think it was printed like maybe 10 years ago. I'm thinking 10, 12 years ago. It's a wonderful, beautiful book with beautiful illustrated pictures of people of Oregon. It's called Nosotros. And one of you is going to have an opportunity to win one of these books because I brought one. And did everybody get a ticket? Everybody got a ticket? Yeah. Okay. So I wanted just to mention that when we did this oral history of the book, we interviewed families who had been here in the 1930s, 1940s. So we talk about when the farm workers come to Oregon, and it really was when they came to work in the railroad. So it wasn't all just agricultural work. They came to work in the railroads, and a lot of them stayed, and a lot of them, literally a little town in Texas. I think it was, let's say, Asherton, Texas. A lot of families probably left the town bare, other than the viejitos who stayed to take care of maybe the animals, I don't know. But a whole little town in Asherton pretty much came in and settled in St. Paul. So everybody knew each other in the labor camp because they all came from Asherton, Texas. And they started to bring the family, and slowly they started to stay. They didn't return back to Asher because there was really nothing to do. So a lot of Latino families, and I can mention a couple of them. Those that are familiar with Raul Ramirez, the Marion County Sheriff in Salem. Are you familiar with Raul? Anyway, Raul's family came from Ashton. Raul's family lived in a labor camp in St. Paul. So here he was, Marion County Sheriff. ¿Verdad? So everybody has roots and everybody has stories. Where did they come from? ¿Verdad? And a lot have connections to migrant worker. They were once part of that, as I was. ¿Verdad? So I hope that if, later on, if I were able to get some more books, get a hold of me and I'll see if I can get you a book. But today I know one of you is going to win one. Let's see. The other thing that I wanted to share before I let Daniel talk, or I'll take over his time too, but is just to remind people that people have come to the state of Oregon and have stayed to live. This is where they settled. They started having their children, their grandchildren here. They didn't return back to Texas. Families have not returned back to Mexico. They settled here. They bought homes here. Oregon is their home. And so we think about the population growing and how much our economy depends. If you go to Woodburn, you go to Walmart, you go to Mega Foods, even Safeway, and you go on a Friday or Saturday night, oh my God. I mean, it's all Hispanic families, so, and the businesses. So can you imagine if there was no Latino, Hispanic, or agriculture workers? A lot of businesses would not make it, because without the population that we serve and us as business people, as professional people, we put a lot of money into our economy. And that's the true fact. And I admire organizations that have also started, you hear about Capaz's Leadership Institute. It's a new program that started under the umbrella of PICUN. And that program, I mean, it's growing leaders. It's putting a lot of money. They're getting grants to teach young youth to become our tomorrow's leaders, to be involved in the political arena, ¿verdad? And so I've gone over there, and it's just amazing what that program is doing. Mano a Mano have been doing a lot in the political action, how to make sure the voter registration drives and making sure people know about some of the laws and the stuff that's happening right now. Some of the, I think I just saw it on Facebook, a couple of because votes that are coming in for a couple of articles that cannot be passed, because it goes against a lot of families. So how much should we be involved in what's happening in our communities and affect Latino families? So it's important to know what's happening in the political arena. In Woodburn, we've had Elida Cifuentes. She's been a city councilwoman for I don't know how many years. So we need to have more people. Before, we never had people on the school board in Woodburn. Yet, 75% were farm worker Latino families. Not one board member. We have 3 now. We have Anthony Vélez. He just got voted. He is now the president of the education board, the state education board. We've had people, in our past, there's Rocky Barria, I think he was a state representative. And then we have our new state representative, I'm trying to remember her name. Anyway, she is really active in the community as well. So the more that we're able to identify more leaders and also teach more of our youth to be more involved in our communities, hopefully, where some of these positions, that should go to represent the population of the communities we serve. So keep that in mind, hopefully también here in Clackamas County or Oregon City area and Molalla, that we identify, community leaders to become more active also as well. Let's see, what else? Were you going to have questions later?
Yes, we can. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the services that you provide at Oregon Human Development, Francis?
Yes, I have brochures and information on the table. OHTC has been in existence since 1979, so we've been providing services to farm workers for many years. We are a workforce investment program. We're part of the National Farm Worker Association, where this is a national program, a national organization. And OHDC was connected at one point to California Human Development, but we became an Oregon-based organization now for over 10 years. We have right now 6 regional offices throughout the state. Woodburn was one of our first. There's Klamath Falls. We have Hillsborough, Hermiston, Ontario, and we just recently had Hillsborough. Am I missing anybody? No, in Gresham we used to have one, but not anymore. And then our central office is located in Tigard. So our funding is primarily to assist migrant and seasonal farm workers with employment and training. So that's really what we call the bread and butter program. But we have other state-funded programs, but I really want to target the federal program because that's the one where we talk about sending clients and getting them into trainings and really work really close with the employment department and work with also other WIA programs to leverage maybe and partner and provide more trainings for farm workers. So it's not just about employment. We all talk about trying to get a job, but it's we've also done a shift. It's let's talk about careers. We're seeing families and people who have skills working in agriculture. We see veterinarians, teachers, nurses, and they have to start all over again. They have skills that they can offer, but they need a little help to get that retraining. And a lot of it they have to start with ESL and maybe start at the bottom and go up again. But we're seeing a lot of people want, go into the CNA, dental assistant, medical assistants. We have funding to provide clients with, they're getting their CDL, being truck driver. I know that the office in Hood River graduate quite a bit of ladies into being the dental and nursing assistants. That's just really a big training for them in that region. In Hermiston, a lot of on-the-job training. Some people in Hermiston are getting paid over $20 an hour once they get the training. So depends on where you are. Each regional office is a little different. It's all about what industry is in your area. And in Woodburn, we have a lot of nurseries. We don't have a lot of industry areas that we're trying to find more training options for clients once they're getting GED and they've learned enough English, is to be able to get certified in a training on a short-term vocational program. And it could look like anything from welding to some sort of mechanic and stuff like that. And then we provide there's no cost to any of the participants in the program. It's free. We provide the tuition, the books, childcare, and transportation. And aside from that, we provide a stipend. So for every hour of training they do, and that includes our GED and ESL, they get paid $6 for every hour. So we're one of, if not the only program that really pays our clients to go to school. And so the main goal is really getting them employed, getting them a job. And we do, our mandates, federal mandates is that, we still have to do follow-up a year upon placement in a job. So we don't leave them just, okay, you got a job, see you and see how it goes for you. No, we track them and are in touch with them every 3 months just to see how they're doing and making sure that there's still no issues for them to stay employed. So I think I covered a little bit about the program. And what else did you want, Maria? I don't know what else.
Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions at this point for Francis?
But like I said, there's information on the table. Feel free. There's a couple of things that I shared. There's a couple of things I brought a share about children in the fields. That's a national program that we're involved in and trying to find children that are out in the fields because we participated this year under the AFOP conference, and we would hear the stories about the children in other states, but we knew that Oregon had some children also picking blueberries and some other crops, and we wanted to see if we can find more, so that Oregon also has a story that we can share about children in the field. So there's a little article on that, and then the union had its 50th anniversary in Delano, and there's a lot of nice pictures that shows. It's just a brochure that I wanted to show you, that it has a lot of photographs of the event of the 50th anniversary of the UFW, and that was in California. So just sharing pictures, because, like I said, I also brought pictures of farm workers, and like Maria said, she was looking at them, and she's, oh my God, this all brings memories. And all of us that have worked in the fields, these pictures can bring a lot of memories, because if you were one of those, that you could see your family doing those jobs.
Thank you, Francis. We do have a question. Wonderful.
So I was just curious. Can you hear me okay? I don't know if it's on. I was just curious, are the services that you're providing to citizens or non-citizens? So I work at DHS, and a lot of the population that we serve, Hispanic population, the parents are non-citizens, but the children are citizens. And so do they have to meet citizenship requirement
Yeah.
to be part of these services?
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you reminded me. We didn't really talk about eligibility, but the eligibility for the federal program, the WIOA 167, you do have to have legal status. We go back 2 years to qualify you for the ag work history. 50% of your income in a 1-year period within the last 2 years, 50% has to be in agriculture. And that's the federal program, and live below the poverty guideline. And if you're a male, you need to have had a selective service. But we also get, and I kind of touched a little bit, is we also get some small portion of state money from Housing and Community Services. So it's not part of the federal grant, it's state monies, and we do provide assistance to undocumented families with emergency housing, rent, and utilities and food. And we also get the CSBG, Community Block Grant money. That's still part of that funds. And we're able to help clients pay for their tuition in GED and ESL if they need. So yeah, for the federal program, they don't qualify for undocumented, but for emergency services, they do qualify, as long as they're, again, farm worker. They have a farm worker history. And actually, Christy oversees a program that actually provides a lot of the EHA funds. So she would be really good to answer questions about more than EHA. But yeah, we do provide assistance to families.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, there will be a chance after Dan's presentation for more questions, or you can write it down on your index card and give it to any one of us that is floating around with a microphone. Thank you, Francis.
Do you want to do?
Oh, do you want to do the raffle now? You guys want to do the raffle now? Let's do it. You can't be reading through the book during the next presentation, though. Let's get your tickets. I already have the book. It's wonderful.
Bring the book. And actually, I have another item, but let's do the book first, and then you guys can get the other item. So you got your ticket. We're just gonna go by the number, and I'll have. This is Alejandra. She works with me. She's my work experience. One of the things that's another thing I forgot to tell you. We also have what we call work experience positions, where we place people to work. It's, you could call it an internship. So Alejandra is in our program, and she's working, learning office skills, and hopefully, once she gets her GED, that she can probably apply for a state job or work with any program. She's really good. She's been helping me quite a bit in my office. Okay, so I'm gonna have her pick. Okay. Ticket number, the last 3 numbers is 636. Give her that one.
you want to do that one now or after?
Let's do it now.
Okay. Don't put your ticket away. One more prize.
Can you bring the water bottle? Then pick one. Okay. 699. Yay. She got it right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. All right. Well, now I have the pleasure of presenting Dan Quiñones. And because I used to work at Francis's office, I also have known Dan for a very long time, and we used to collaborate in the community providing service. Dan is the father of two boys, 16 and 14. He's been employed at WorkSource Oregon Employment Department for 28 years. He's a board member of OCDC, Oregon Child Development Coalition. He's an advisor to the Institute de Cultura Oregoniana, past board member of Centro Cultural in Woodburn, past chapter president of International Association of Workforce Professionals, and he's a recipient of the 2014 Latino Small Business Conference Public Champion Award. And like Francis, I could probably go on and take up the time, but we will move on to his wonderful presentation. Please help me welcome Dan Quiñones.
I'm going to walk around a little bit because I had an accident earlier in the year, so my hip's starting to lock up. So I'm going to be hovering around a little bit. Buenos dias. Good morning. Thank you for having me. First of all, I want to thank everybody in this wonderful state for the work that we do and the great folks that we work with. I'm going to give you a little bit of a vision of what I see every day, and this is working with farm workers. The work I've done on and off throughout my life has been in the fields. I do come back from a farm worker background, and excuse my language because I get tongue-tied because I'm speaking Spanish about 90% of the time, so I get confused from time to time. But I'm going to show a little video to start off the presentation about some of the work that we're doing out there and what's actually happening. So. And as usual, here we go.
So one day, God looked down on the United States and said, I need someone who will work in the fields to provide cheap food for these people. So God made a farm worker. God said, I need somebody willing to do work that few Americans will do, and who will work for pay so low they may not even earn minimum wage. To get up, work all day in the fields, stooped over in the heat and rain, returning exhausted at night to collapse on a worn mattress in a shabby shack or cement block apartment. Somebody willing to work 10 or 12 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week, to feed his or her family, and not complain when they don't get overtime or denied the right to a day of rest. So God made a farm worker. God said, I need women desperate enough to withstand the sexual abuse and harassment prevalent in the fields and packaging houses, who won't complain when they get less pay than men for the same work. Women who, after a full day's work, return home to care for and cook for their family. So God made a farm worker. It had to be somebody desperate enough to ride on a train thousands of miles from their home country, risking their life for a chance at a better one. Somebody desperate enough to even allow their child to ride that train. It had to be somebody who would seed, weed, harvest, and pack food so Americans could eat cheaply. Somebody who would willingly sacrifice their life so their children might live a better one. Somebody who, in spite of the pain and suffering, can still smile and laugh, and when asked what they want their children to be when they grow up, answers, anything but a farm worker.
This is the reality of the work I do. I cover an area about 1,200 square miles. Throughout the summer, we have up to about 15,000 farm workers who come here to work from out of state, from various states. There's flows of people that come in, depending on the crop harvest, and we see the average farm worker here who comes here, a very low education level. But, you know, myself, my parents had that low education level, and they knew that education was the way out. That's what these parents are looking for, and they want that way out for their children. I will give you a little background because I have lived in a camp. First year we came to Oregon, we were recruited out of McAllen, Texas, to come work in Oregon to harvest strawberries. We were here for the summer, our first summer in Oregon, and we had a flood in Texas. All our belongings were gone because of the flood. The water raised to 1 inch to the roof, about 1 inch from the roof. So everything that we really had at that point in time that we left in Texas was gone. So we stayed in Oregon, and that's where we decided to make our life. First year we stayed here, we lived in a barn, 2-story barn. Bottom was used for hay and equipment. The tops where we were living in had no heat, no running water. We would go into town to get water. We would have propane tanks and stoves to cook and to be able to bathe and so forth, heat the water and so forth. During the winters in Oregon is where we found out what snow was. We heard of snow. We'd seen it on postcards. The first winter we were here in 1970 was one of the hardest winters that they had on record. We had snow piled up all over the place, and we could not even leave our housing facility, the barn, to go into town to get water and so forth because of the snow. But we are always looking at ways to make things better. My dad, when let's start melting the snow, let's start doing this until we got done. So when the snow melt started to happen, we said, oh, great, we're finally going to be able to just be able to maneuver. And guess what? We started flooding. So we found out that snow creates a lot of water, and it floods the place you're living. So we're still stuck in our little barn there because we couldn't get out because of the water. But anyways, that was our start in Oregon. We probably did not make enough to go back. Farm work was very difficult and hard work. That was the first time we were here. And we met some folks along the area, in the Woodburn area. And there was like 5 families in that area that we knew. And those were the families who wintered at the time in the 70s. So there was a close connection. We could go to the store. We didn't know. We'd ask for tortillas. They'd look at us like, well, what? We don't make them. We don't have them. Where would you get them? Lard is one of the items that we use to make tortillas or other things. They had to special order it. And over time, the Woodburn area has expanded and grown. And it's no surprise that we're very well rated in our soccer teams and the things that Woodburn is known for because of the population base. We have Russians, we have Latinos, and soccer is a big part of our lives. So there's a reason we are a powerhouse out there, and will always be. And just fortunate to say I was one of the graduates from Woodburn High School. Not when we were that good, but I did coach the first team that went through there and went to the state championship. So it was great to know that that tradition keeps going, and they're very well versed in the soccer world and respected. So the workers. One of the things when we talk about agriculture, most of the workers, you don't see them. We have a saying in Salem, by the time everybody comes into work, the farm workers have already left. At 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, the main bridges are all busy with people going out. At 7:30, the bridges are busy with people coming in. So this population is a population that's pretty much hidden to some folks. They never really experience the folks who come to work here. Sometimes they'll see them at the store, they'll see them at the Walmart, like Francis was saying. But it's something normal that these folks are out early when nobody sees them. I'm out sometimes at 3 in the morning for the work I do. We do orientations for the workers at 3 in the morning. This is one that we were out there right at the break of dawn, waiting for the workers. This is just as it's getting light. This is where we do our orientations. Judy is one of the employees for our agency. We're in back of a pickup truck talking to the workers as they're coming in about their rights. Minimum wage is something that changes from state to state. A lot of these folks are very vulnerable to being taken advantage of with their wages. A lot of them don't know that they're supposed to get breaks in the state of Oregon. So we're doing the very basics, what we take for granted here. we are doing that basic work saying, well, no, you deserve a break. You have to. It's a law. So the folks really appreciate the work we do, and we have enough respect from the employment community where we are now allowed to go to most to do orientations for the employees, and also work with them when issues arise. We are not an enforcement agency, but we do work with the employers to make sure that those employees have the legal requirements, sanitation needs. Who think in 2018 we'd still be asking some employers to provide bathrooms? This is where the consumer comes in. The consumer should be demanding these basic things. This is the food we're buying. This is the food we're getting on our table every day. As you can see, the amount of people keeps growing. We had like 400 people at this field that morning. And these people, some of them had just arrived the night before from California to come harvest this gentleman's blueberries. Just making it to work doesn't assure that any safety rules are going to be met. These folks here, we're going to work. Raiteros are folks who transfer people for a fee. Most of the raiteros, some of them don't have an Oregon license. Some of them do not know how to drive a vehicle with a lot of folks in that vehicle. A lot of these individuals don't carry enough insurance, and there's laws and regulations that apply to that. This is how the folks who are contractors in some instances get around that law. They say, well, they're carpooling. But these things happen. I mean, some of these folks can make a very good living. Out in Whitburn during the summer, we can see houses where you go in, they have 5 or 6 vans, and that's all they do. They travel back and forth with the workers in the morning, pick them up for a fee. A lot of these folks here, they probably were released from their job. A lot of them didn't even know, they probably didn't know that they had rights. So a lot of them, like I said, the insurance and the vehicle in itself does not cover the damages in this case. And these are human beings. I mean, there's laws to protect them, but those laws sometimes are not followed. And these are some of the issues that we deal with. Even making it to work doesn't assure safety. I mean, we were in this field, myself and the state monitor advocate, and an airplane is spraying as they're picking the blueberries. This happened here a few years back when the monitor advocate just started with us. But we were sitting out in the field talking to the folks, letting them know about their rights and so forth. And here's a plane coming in, and then the drift would come over into the field. And even though we reported it, there was, like I said, I don't think any action was taken at the time. It just, I don't know what to say. Sometimes, if this happened anywhere else, I think we'd be appalled. We'd see, that, hey, this isn't right. But this is one of the things that we did experience out there. Here's the folks in the winter who are planting our sugar. Every morning when we get our coffee, this is where it all starts. These folks are out there. They're carrying 50, 60-pound sacks. They're moving stuff throughout the fields there. And they're sitting there in real cold weather most of the time. There's females, young ladies in the job. This is equal opportunity, if you want to call it that, because it doesn't matter. As long as they can do that job, they're hired. This is one of the fields that we're visiting. The state monitor advocate went to visit this field here. This is a cilantro field. And the gentlemen were taking a break and looking for shade, of course. You can see the little bit of shade and where they're all gathering. And like I said, everybody's gathered around the break there. The water's out there in the sun, not even in the shade to keep it at least somewhat cool. This is in late fall. There people are harvesting. This team of ladies was out there harvesting Brussels sprouts. And these are the fresh product that you get on your table. Nice cold beer. Do we all know where our ice cold beer comes from? Step 1 right here. This is very dangerous work. This year we had one of those tractors flip over with the people on it. A couple years ago we had a death. Somebody fell off the top of one of those. So the work itself is one of the most dangerous jobs, along with construction. When you talk about agriculture, this is what we deal with on a daily basis. Some of the water that these folks are getting during the summer in Oregon, we decided we didn't want any deaths in our fields. So we go out to the fields and we carry ice, water for the workers. We also carry the OSHA brochures about having water for their employees, extra breaks, and information to keep those employers in the know of how they need to take care of their workers. We also have OSHA brochures about basically saying, hey, you know, you got to take care of them so they can take care of you. So there's some promotional stuff. This year is the first year they did a media blitz with working in high heat because of the conditions we had this year, which is new to us throughout Oregon. This is our lunches in the fields. Usually a taquera van or somebody, a family member, usually will cook food and sell it out in the fields. So they all gather around there, have their meal, then go right back to work. Lunchtime, depending if you're working piece rate, you're mandated a half-hour lunch, and you're still mandated your breaks. But most of these folks will eat anything they can in a couple minutes because they're going to lose time and money by not going back to pick a crop. Again, just a cherry harvest. It's out in the Hood River area. They're all doing a quick lunch so they can get back. And you notice that they're all sitting here drinking those energy drinks, which is very common in the fields because of the work they're doing. It's very difficult, very hard. And that's a lot of them are now into these energy drinks, which hopefully soon we'll start doing something and let them know that these are bad for them. They think they're good for them at this point in time. We have health for farm workers in the fields. We have a group of folks, Quality Health, who goes with us, or we tag along with them, depending on the situation. And they do some on-site screening, blood screening, some diabetes testing. They do have a dental van that comes out with them from time to time, and we set up appointments just for the folks who need that service. And it is something that we do on a regular basis throughout our various offices. Right here, some of the folks had some high numbers, so she's letting the folks what these numbers are, what they mean, what they should be doing, and it's all done out in the fields. One of the greatest things that I feel sometimes is the employers are doing a good thing, but when we were at these sites, it was 90-some degrees, and we were outside in the weather. And sometimes they have these areas that they rent for events that are sitting empty, but we're all sitting outside doing all this. And you can see that the employer cares, but I don't know that the thinking is there yet, that these are people, they need to be taken care of. Sometimes we just look and say, wow, this empty building here, and we're out here in 90-some degree weather. But things are getting better slowly. It's going to take some more time for us to keep doing what we're doing here. Housing, it becomes a big issue in the valley as soon as June hits. June is the start of the strawberry season. So when you have 6,000 farm workers throughout the year, and then you jump to 15,000 farm workers, then you got, again, situations where folks are having to find a place to live. This is a bridge just outside of Woodburn. They have that sign there. In Woodburn, we have people who are doubling up, tripling up, renting a garage. We've heard instances where 4 or 5 people are renting the same garage just for a place to sleep while they're here to harvest blueberries. So there's a whole bunch of other things that happen in the local economy also. The economy goes up because of the folks who need to buy food, who need to buy gas. So in Woodburn in itself, the folks who cater to that population actually are doing very well. They have done very well for years. And the population itself keeps coming back every year to shop at those stores. So one of the things that we see, as she was saying, on a Friday night, on a Thursday night, weekend, these stores that have been catering to those populations are always full of people who are purchasing their products there from them. And those businesses always keep catering to them for that reason. They are, after all, when we look at it, in Oregon, they're about a $20 billion industry. And that is with a B, billion. So when we think about the folks that come in here, that industry in Woodburn in itself, If you get a chance, please, one of these Friday nights, go to the stores there, look at the population. And that's the kind of business that they do in these areas. In Whitburn, we have seen panaderias that come in, bakeries. We have downtown Whitburn, which is mostly Latino owned now, which that part of town was going dead because most of the industry had moved out. The Latino population moved in, opened restaurants, other businesses, the check cashing places there in downtown Whitburn, throughout Whitburn. So that's a big sign that the population keeps growing and it keeps expanding outside of the downtown area. We have it in certain parts of Whitburn now. That goes for Salem also, Oregon City, Canby now. We're starting to see these places, tortillerias, a lot of the check cashing places, places where you can transfer money back and forth. So that's a big sign that people are living in the area. And more, we're seeing the population increase here in Oregon. You know, we've had this law for I don't know how long, and children in the fields. We were called out here because the next day they had projected rain, and the workers were harvesting the cherries in this field, and the employer, the owner, wanted to protect the cherries so they would not split open. Cherries, if you don't know, once it rains on them, they split open, so the crop would pretty much be gone. So they spray chemicals on them to protect them. Unfortunately, when we were called, it was because the workers who were picking in the trees, they were driving in and out of there spraying while they were working in the trees. And when we showed up, this is what we found in the field. These kids, I mean, I think the oldest girl was 9 years old. And this was 5 minutes from your state capitol, by the way. I mean, right within the area. We just drove out there to find it. And there's a lot of the children that are working in the fields. A lot of deaths in the fields with children because of the dangers of the work that they do. Agriculture is very dangerous. There's kids who are working in stables that don't have the skills for it. There's kids who are working around tractors, working around machinery in agriculture. It's very dangerous work. So we do have some deaths that happen, and a lot of it, it's the children that are impacted, as well as the families. But the impact that it makes, at least to us, sometimes we do get very emotional with the work we do, and sometimes we can come over as an enforcement agency, but we don't have any enforcement regulations or any of that. We cannot enforce a thing. We can work with the agencies that do that. When we do our outreach, we're out and about in the countryside. This is one of the places that we would go out. They have a camp out in that area. So camp means farm workers. Usually we travel out to this camp because there is a state park just at the end of that camp. And then the state park, we know when there's farm workers that can't find housing, they stay at that park. They set up shop there for a week or two until they find housing. So we always go out and do outreach. Right up on top, as you can see, the sign there, and that's as we're getting just past the camp, it says, due to the high price of ammo, we will not be given a warning shot. The management, and this is out in the rural back areas. So this is the kind of places we sometimes have to go to. And fortunately, we have our agency who knows the work we do, and we're educating on a regular basis. Sometimes we have to take two people. Sometimes we have to stay away and take somebody else with us. We've been fortunate. We, again, earn the respect of those employers where we're able to walk into their fields, talk to them, and make sure that everything's okay. But sometimes you will run into this where you kind of advise that might not be a good idea, and you have to leave it alone if that's what they want to keep putting up in their places. There's nothing we can do about it. This is basically, she was talking about Cesar Chavez. Here's something that we always talk about, that we cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress, prosperity of our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own. This is where, the farm worker movement started this process. This is where we started when we came to Oregon, seeing the needs. I was fortunate. I worked for Francis. My first job in state government or nonprofit organizations was working for Francis. So I did start working with farm workers at that point in time. From there, I moved on to the state of Oregon, and we work very close together with all the agencies who have protections and who also have services available to this population. There's nothing that you can see that'll warm your heart as a little kid who's smiling the day you walk by and see them in town and they tell you they got a house. It just sometimes brings you to tears when you hear these folks, their stories, and when you see them and they're doing well. We have success stories, and again, through the partnership. Right now, I have the gentleman was so happy with the service we provided, and he is now in charge of a national chain of banks, and he is the IT manager for them. That is through Francis's program, and throughout the years that we kept in touch working with them. But that's just a small piece of the success stories. His daughter just graduated as an engineer, civil engineer, and his son graduated this year as a biology, with a biology major, and he's going to be going back for his master's at this point in time. And those are the little successes we see. Those are some of them. I think Francis has the same problem I do. I can't go to your local Walmart because we have these strangers walk up to us who, at one time or another, we help them. And that's the best reward we get. They'll come in and introduce you to the children, and he said, I don't remember you. Can you help me out? And they'll talk about the time they came into the office for services, and we guided them to this process or assisted them. And that's the rewards of the job I do. And because I wear a suit for these events, don't think that I don't know the plight. We did pick strawberries. I did work in the hops. My mother and my father, when we came to Oregon, we originally came here basically to make our life after the flood happened. And we pretty much started with the school districts. We were, I guess, the odd people out when we came in. There was, I think in the first school I went to, there was 2 Latinos, myself, and I think Leo was the gentleman's name. And that family's still around in the area. As we went back from the school that we were in and moved into the Woodburn area, there was 8 Latinos at the time. Then it started growing. By the time I graduated from high school, we had about 10% of the Latinos. Unfortunately, the school and the things that happened in school, because we had certain things that we needed to get caught up on. I was fortunate. We had a lot of folks that took the time and effort to work with us to get us to that speed, but not everybody got the same treatment. So some of us, myself included, because we had to learn English or perfect our English, were put into the classes with retarded children. So we were put away basically to the back, so we would not be able to basically be part of the school. I was fortunate through sports. I became part of the school system. My career counseling when I was getting out of school was, you know what, you work at a gas station, you'll be a great mechanic. And that was my career counseling. When I left, came to Clackamas Community College originally to do auto body and fender and learn how to do that since I enjoyed cars a lot. Lo and behold, I went back and became a mechanic. I had my own shop, started my own business, and later on started a couple other businesses with the skills I had learned here in Clackamas Community College. And those were just small steps. I think I was one of 2 businesses at the time, Mexico Lindo and Whitburn, myself. And a lot of people didn't know that I owned the business. I worked there for many years before I took over the business. And like I said, but as Woodburn kept growing in the 80s, we started to see a whole different process. The Latino population just in the 80s exploded. So we got to see the growth of Woodburn. I've seen the houses come down. I happened to be in the fire department at the time. We were burning houses where they were building malls, burn houses where they built the local Walmart. And a lot of the Latino population just kept coming and coming. And the school itself, when I first moved into the high school, the Whitburn High School, I was the first year that graduated from that class. Now we have many other mini high schools within a high school that are there because of the population growth. And a lot of those folks are Latinos. which also brings back to some of these folks, to your Tony Bellies of the world. They are Whitburn graduates who came back to work for their city. I have volunteered with my city. Again, I was in the fire department for about 10 years there at the local fire department. We had other services that needed it in the community. Farm worker housing is there now. So all these are services that over time kept growing and are still growing in that community. But the successes that are coming in from these projects are what we're looking at. Because it's farm worker housing doesn't necessarily mean that it's just a place for their parents to live and the kids to go to school. They have training programs specifically for those kids to make sure they are going to succeed in school. So these are things that, that little extra help that are needed for these young men and young women who are now coming out of your colleges, who we're seeing in the community. Capaces, they're another great organization that is now teaching those folks how to work within the systems. And these were all dreams when we were coming up, when Pecun started. Like I said, that was back in the 70s when we were talking about Pecun. Pecun is the Farm Workers Union that is in Whitburn. From there, they've expanded to various areas for that population that we are working with in Whitburn and various communities, not just Whitburn. Some of the things, success stories, and some of the other folks that we have grown with, we have Mr. Muñiz, who was judge for the Oregon Supreme Court. He was one of the local folks. Raul Ramirez, Lee Vasquez out in Yamhill County, who was one of the local sheriffs. We have some folks here in the Portland area who started the Latino Chamber of Commerce. And I still remember when we first were working with the Latino Chamber in Portland, there was like 8 of us. That was a Latino chamber. Right now, that chamber, I think it's about 1,200 strong and growing. And I think we have seen that the power of the Latino population and their spending power is now starting to be a focus of the business community. And along with that, the services that are being provided to them, I think we're not looking long term. I think most of the services that folks come into us, this is short term. We need help with our rent. I think we hear that how many times a day? And they're not saying, I need you to pay my rent for the year. I just need to be able to get by this month so I can go ahead and make things happen next month. And in this population, like I said, the first generation, with me being first generation and Francis being first generation, we're very fortunate. Our children have not seen what we do. We tell them. They think it's funny sometimes, the stories we tell, because we do have some good stories. And some of my best memories are in the fields to this day. And, we so well knit. I have friends who would travel here from Texas that they invite us to go visit them in Texas or wherever they're living in the world. We go visit them still because of those bonds that were made when we were very young in the fields. And just one of those things that we grew up with, and the bonds are still going to be there. And like I said, working with Francis, working with a lot of the organizations there, I'm sure we've had contact at some level or another because we're all in the same business. It's just amazing to see all the people who are here to help those populations succeed. And for that, we thank you. My agency, again, thanks everybody. And WorkSource Oregon, as you know, we are based throughout the state of Oregon. We have various programs for employers and for folks who are looking for work. Our agency is the largest job-ready applicant pool. We have that statewide with various offices who can assist the employers. We have worker opportunity tax credit programs. We also have unemployment insurance. And if you're a business or if you're considering going into the business world, we have labor economists who can provide information about the labor market that they're in, or if you need something specific, our offices do have a representative there who can assist you with those services. And like I said, the migrant program is one of the small programs within that. We also have the same monies come from the federal government for our veterans programs. We also have veterans programs in our offices, and The other programs that are available are training programs. If you need to upgrade your skills or if you need to look for other work while you're working, we have those things available for you. It's something that you can go online. If you're interested, go on workinginoregon.com, and that'll guide you through our system. So other than that, I think I pretty much bared my soul. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them, and I think I'll let Francis here chime in because a lot of the background, we can go back and forth with the background, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them for you.
Hi, my name is Alice. I work for libraries in Clackamas County. I'm in Estacada, and my question is, how can we bring Latino and Spanish speakers into our library doors with the political climate and ICE raids? What kind of outreach, programming, or services would you recommend us as public libraries to have for Latinos?
I totally understand the question. Oh, I don't think I need that.
Okay.
But one of the things, because it's a true fact that a lot of families right now are living in fear a little bit of what's the situation. So I would think a lot of it is teniendo la confianza. They feel comfortable with you. And you have to establish that safe, that what you're trying to do. And libraries is an excellent family place to be. It's a safe place. Offer opportunities for everybody. You know, the children and activities, whether it's renting movies or whatever. But, you know, it's kind of hard, really, right now, because we're telling our families, you know, there was that time in Woodburn, it's always busy downtown. But during that week, when they had the first raid, it was like a ghost town. Nobody was out there. And I will share with you one of the things I talked to the manager at Mega Foods, also very busy at Mega Foods, but everybody was shopping late at night. It opens 24 hours. He was seeing a high rise of families coming to shop at 10 o'clock at night because that's when they were coming out to shop because they didn't feel safe during the day. And they knew that if they shopped really late, they were adjusting their schedules to fit in what was happening. You know, so we sometimes have to accommodate and move, you know, how do we talk to families to have them feel, you know, that, you know, and then for us to tell them, be safe, it's comfortable, you know, this, but what if they're not? What if something happens? They show up. So it is a conversation that a lot of agencies and programs need to talk about. You know, how do we bring them back in? Or how do they, you know, talk to them to feel safe again? And it's a hard one because I would hate to have families to feel safe and come in and guess what? Guess who's coming over that day that I didn't expect? And they trusted me. So see, sometimes it's kind of an unknown.
Well, on my behalf, like I said, we reach out to them. Farm workers are usually working from sun up to sundown. So there's your window of opportunity. It has to be after those hours. We host a lot of our events after hours for farm workers due to the fact that that's when they're going to be able to show up. So the children are going to be at home. So if you can find a way to work with those populations during those time frames or reach out to them and let them know that you're available. Even if you do an outreach, you know, if you can take a list of the books and so forth that they need, that would also help. It's getting out to them because they're not going to come out to you. You know, in probably in Estacada, I'm not sure what is the population base over there. 8.7%. Mm-hmm. Good. I go there a lot, so I don't see a lot of Latinos there. But yes, I do see the signs that they're growing. So just reaching out to them, and if you can create a program that says, hey, we can do this and bring the books to you, and a lot of the folks might be able to be more perceptive to the program.
I would agree with Dan and Francis. I think to establish that relationship, you really need to take the time and go out to the fields. Establish that relationship, and then once they know who you are and they trust you, then it would be a lot easier for them to come into your organization. But your best bet is being out in the fields. So if you are an organization that doesn't have outreach funds, really advocate for that, because we talk about making our work and our services equitable, but that's not going to happen unless we change the way we do business.
I apologize. This may not really be a question, but I wanted to piggyback on that. One of the things that we're struggling with is we want to do more outreach, but so I work at Legal Aid Services of Oregon. My name is Guillermo Ramos. I think it's what I've struggled with is we had the issues about ICE at the courthouse or at the library. I don't know what the answer is, but I think maybe that's for us to be pushing back towards the top about what are we, if we're going to be doing outreach, what kind of safety parameters can we put in to protect the people that we are saying come in, use our services. We are telling them, at the same thing at the courthouse. If the courthouse is open for everybody, what services, how is it protecting people? And I think it's okay for us to ask the people above us, how do we do that? What are we doing? Are we doing anything?
Hi, I'm Jamie and I work with disaster management for the county. So your story about kind of surviving a disaster, so flooding, I'm wondering what recommendations you have for us in disaster management to doing outreach following a disaster to try to get services to these folks that may just leave or not know that we have services for them.
Well, one of the basic things is you have the Latino population. Radio is the way to get the word out. I think you can do some commercials and run them through about specific programs. Some of the stations are mandated to do so many free spots for community events and so forth. So it's a good idea to get your local radio station involved in the process. Once they're partnering with you, a lot of this information can be sent out. Have you asked the population? As a MSFW worker, I can say this is what they need. But when you get right to the point, we ask them, what is it that you need? Then it gives us an idea where we need to start working or what we need to start working towards. Clackamas County is a very big county. I know it's very rural, but the radio is your first communication tool to get the word out. I know I have worked with the Salem radio stations on a regular basis to let them know what we do and promote the services of our offices. I have worked with other organizations. Earthquake Preparedness Week, I help with the translation along with some of the community folks who we ask for help to translate it into Spanish. So it's now in Spanish. So the information, it's a matter of sometimes you're asking the people what the service is or what is it that they need in order to accomplish that. And that's, again, your outreach services. Once they gain that trust, you can ask those questions, and most of them will let you know what the needs are.
And I'd like to add also, depending on the disaster, it's good to reach out to the agencies that already established that relationship with the Latino community. Let me share with, that we had that water crisis in Salem. You guys heard about the water. I mean, literally the whole city were scrambling, trying to figure out, how to resolve this issue of water. And one of the populations, some of they identify farm workers as being one of the high-risk families. How do we get water to these families? And they brought in organizations like Mano a Mano, because the city knew they couldn't do it. They reached out to Mano a Mano and said, help us make sure Latino farm worker families in the housing projects had the water. Where do they go? And which is really true. A lot of families didn't know where to go. There was all these water outlets where they were giving out water, and everybody was out there buying water. Well, some of these families couldn't afford that. So it's, again, that was an example of, identifying the high-risk population. One was elderly, and one was the farm worker population, and they brought a lot of water out to the housing projects, the farm worker housing projects. So that worked for us, but a lot of it is the city knew we need to bring some of these people in to help us.
Before we get to your question, during the 96 floods, anybody remember those? I was in Whitburn. I couldn't get home because of the high water, so I had to return back to Whitburn. I was called by the local radio station to come in and help them because the folks who had lost their houses or could not get to their houses, a lot of the shelters did not have Spanish-speaking or other languages spoken in those shelters at the time. So my job during the whole night shift that I worked at that radio station helping them out was to call agencies throughout Clackamas County, Marion County, and we were asking the people on the air to please call us if they could assist so they could get them to these places to translate as needed. So that was the first time we've seen in the Whitburn area where this plan needed to be expanded because that's where we were at. So the community itself has to contribute to it to see what the needs are. But yeah, once you get out there, you'll have that. And you can have this plan. You can have it in your management plan. It's so big. I mean, there's so many things that can happen here in Oregon. Earthquake is probably the worst. What are we going to do if we got our children in Portland? You're not going to have a bridge to get to Portland anymore, folks. That's the reality of things. What is plan B? You won't be able to go to Malala. There's 2 or 3 bridges along the way that are probably going to go out. The back roads to Estacada. As long as there's a bridge there, we're going to have some issues. If you have flood, where do people know? Where do they know that they got to be at when they can no longer go home? Who's going to take care of their kids? How do we get this plan? It's so big that we have to make sure that that information is out there to the public. They need to know what those resources are in case of that emergency.
Hi, my name is Fernando. I work for Clackamas County Head Start. I guess, what I'm looking to know is if you guys have any experience or any advice in this. I do the enrollment for our agency, but I also do the outreach aspect of it. And, I go and visit different parts of the county where we have some of our centers. One of those is Molalla. And in one of my outreach meetings that happened actually like 3 months ago, I found out that, for example, and it's kind of related to what we're talking right now about situations of, when there is a catastrophe, right? The Molalla Fire Department doesn't have anybody that's bilingual, never had. So the group that I was meeting, there's a wonderful, group. They were trying to figure it out, like just brainstorm, like what do we do if somebody in the community that is only Spanish speaking or any other language for that matter, right? But is Spanish speaking, if they have an emergency, how do we do to even communicate with them? And they couldn't figure it out. And I don't know if you, in your experience, have seen that happening. I'm sure you have. But how do we tackle a situation like that in a short term? I mean, long term obviously will be more education for the younger generations. So hopefully, when they graduate from high school, they're going to try to go into these careers. Another example that I have, I go also and do outreach for the North Clackamas area because we have a few centers there. And I also came to find out that in the Milwaukee Police Department, they only have one person that is bilingual Spanish, and is this lady that happens to be there because her dad was the previous bilingual police officer in Milwaukee. That is probably one of the largest, police districts in the county. So, I don't know, any ideas?
Well, can I just say something? Like I know in Woodburn, they do have, the city has a Hispanic liaison. I don't know his official title, but I think it's
Community relations.
Community relations. We've also been attending the Woodburn Chamber, and they have I don't know, about maybe 5 Latinos involved at the Woodburn Chamber as well. We have a community network every first Monday of the month. They're all community advocates and outreach workers that work with Latino families. So I would think, depending, because I don't know too much about Molalla, but I do know that in our area, if we have a situation that a crisis can happen or catastrophe, we have a network of people who we can call. I know Gustavo would be one of the first ones to call on us to bring together about how we're going to do this to help families, whatever crisis it is being able to identify, but at the same time, the city leaders, the people that are the leaders, don't wait until you have a situation. Don't wait until you're scrambling trying to figure out who do we call, but you have them there. You first identify, and maybe that would be something that can be, have a conversation, bring people together to have a conversation that have a plan. Who would we call? Who are the networks? Who would be the one? And, for me working in Woodburn for as many years, and I think we would know who to call each other. I would start with that, is establish that network of, and include some of those community, include the county sheriff, include the city council people, the downtown manager. They need to sit with you. They need to listen, what if this happens or this happens? Because a lot of times, usually they don't know what to do. And we saw a good example in Salem about the water. They came together, and that's one of the things they talked about after the situation was over. They talked what worked, what didn't work, and one of the things that came out is, thank God we have good network, because we had everybody on the table to figure out how are we going to bring water to everybody, and they didn't have it planned, but can you imagine if it would have been longer, or could have been a different type of situation? The water issue was a good test, and they came back together and they said, we're going to be better. We learned a lesson. We learned a little bit what to do it better, but it was really good conversation what came out of that situation.
Let me add to that it'd be a good idea to sit down with some of those folks, the police department, the fire department, and ask those questions. Set up a meeting, say, hey, we'd like to know this community doesn't have any representation. In case of an emergency, what is your plan? Do you have a plan? Let's work on a plan. So once you start working on a plan with them, you will know what the plan is. The people involved will also have an idea of where they need to go or who to search out in case of an emergency. But yeah, sometimes if it doesn't exist, you got to go and start pushing and knocking on doors and saying, here we are, we need this plan. And most of the people who live here are citizens of this community. They also want to be represented. So it's a matter of starting to knock on those doors, push on the doors if you have to sometimes, but make that time and say, what is the plan? If not, let's get some folks together to create that plan. You got a question back there?
I actually wanted to add to that as well, because I work with an interpreting agency, and we contract with a lot of counties, including Clackamas County. But in my experience, I've done a lot of work directly with Multnomah County, disaster services, environmental services, and things like that. And it's really great to have a connection with an interpreting agency, because you can't always find bilingual staff, or maybe there are certain organizations that don't have that available. So if you have an agency that your county or organization is already contracted with, they can help you create that language access plan as well, because the individuals themselves have rights, and one of their rights is to have access to interpreter services. So you can always connect and talk about county contracts or things like that, and say, who do we work with for interpreter services? Because a lot of those organizations have that set up, but for some reason the staff doesn't get the information. So when they need it, they're like, well, what do we do? And so talking about that and asking that question would be helpful as well.
Thank you. I have a couple questions that were written down here. I believe this one is for Dan. You were talking about $20 billion in spending. Is this specific to migrant seasonal farm worker and their families?
No, this is for the Latino population in the state of Oregon. That is it's probably gone up quite a bit more in the last few years, the spending power of the Latino population. Nationwide, I think it's $878 billion. So that population does have a lot of expendable cash at this point in time.
Thank you. And this question is for both of you. what recommendations do you have for us to be conscious consumers and only support companies that don't exploit their workers?
That's a great question, and you know, I think that's the dream for us and the farm workers. There are various organizations that have some like the union crops. They have a stamp on it. It's union picked, so they meet some of that criteria. There's a lot of the farmers are signing on to what is called the GAP, the Good Agricultural Practices, which is some of the canneries are now demanding it. That means that they're going to pay them on time. They're going to have bathrooms, drinking water, access to the bathrooms that they need. Because, I mean, who'd think we were talking about these things now? You can't go to the bathroom, somebody telling you that, but it still happens. So that's what the Good Agricultural Practices, and I don't know that they stamp that, but you can, as a consumer, you have all the power. You know, if you go to your local restaurant to eat, you can ask where that food comes from. And if they don't know, maybe they can do some research and find out where that food is coming from. There's no system, believe it or not, that says these employers here are doing this or doing that. There's nothing out there right now. But there are some folks who are taking some action to try to get that information out, that this product was picked under these conditions. And it has to, at all times now, they can track all the products. So there's ways to track where it came from if they didn't pay the workers or they didn't give them their breaks and so forth. You know, so I'm sure something's going to come up here in the near future with all this new technology. We hear people talking, wanting to do it, but we don't have anything that's there yet. But other than that, you are the consumer. I mean, the food you eat is from the folks that are out there working in the fields, bringing it to you. So if you don't ask where it comes from and you don't know, then it's basically your responsibility to ask. I mean, you're paying for this food. You want to know that it's clean. You want to know that your children can eat this food. You know, that's where it comes from. We can all be advocates at some level for those farm workers.
And me personally, a lot of times is, you know, when I hear situations where families have been treated unjustly, or, you know, they've been discriminated, you know, we need to take it upon ourselves to do that one step and call that business and tell them that you're no longer going to do business because of what you understood. You know, we can't be quiet anymore. A lot of times, you know, it didn't happen to me, you know, so as long as, you know, I'm okay. But, you know, it's not like that anymore, you know, especially with the political climate the way it has been. You know, I'm not going to spend money in a business, in an industry that do not treat people fairly. And so we have that ability to say, I'm not going to buy here anymore because of what I saw, I witnessed, or I heard. So it takes some personal responsibility for us as well.
Any other questions in the audience? Okay. Dan, can you just say the agency that you work for?
Yes. I work for WorkSource Oregon. WorkSource Oregon, again, we have offices throughout the state and various programs. If you're an employer or a job seeker, by all means, drop by our offices. So if you have a young child who's getting into the work world, by all means, send them our way. We have various training programs, access to various apprenticeship opportunities. But if you got a second, we can play a little game and talk about farm workers.
Do you want to do that? How long is
We
that?
can do about 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do it. Sounds like fun. Though, those of you that have to leave early, please take a moment to fill out the survey and let us know. Answer those questions. That way we know for future coffee talks what you guys are interested in.
And please check our table, get brochures and information. My business card is there. If you know of anybody that you think would qualify for employment and training, please have them call us. I would be happy. I mean, I work in Woodburn, but if somebody finds it real hard to go to Woodburn, I would be happy to come here. I'm sure that one of you can lend me a little space that I can be able to talk to somebody and do an eligibility and see what we can do. So I'm willing to come here as well.
Thank you. All right, let's play.
All right, let's see. How many folks here are involved in agriculture? How many folks eat? You're involved in agriculture. We had, for farm workers, does anybody know about the Judge Ritchie See, Judge Ritchie lawsuit and Peter Brennan against the Department of Labor. Does anybody know when that happened? When the 68 farm workers sued the Department of Labor for discrimination? The NAACP filed the lawsuit. Does anybody know when that happened at all? Close. 1873. You know when it became an order? 1980. In Oregon, and not all states have this law yet, breaks. Do you know when farm workers were allowed breaks here in the state of Oregon? Yeah, in the 2000s, they were allowed breaks. Do farm workers earn time and a half? Yeah, agriculture is exempt from time and a half laws. So you can work up to 20 hours a day straight time in agriculture. So the folks who are out here, they can work 20 hours. Children at 12 years old can go and work in the fields. Does everybody know what the definition of a migrant farm worker is? Yes, that's part of it. If they cannot return home the same day, though. So that's the catch there. We have people who travel, who are considered migrant farm workers, who travel to Alaska to go work in the canneries there. Once they get back to Oregon, they are considered migrant seasonal farm workers. We have people who come in from Texas to work at the local canneries also, so those are considered farm workers. Does everybody know what the minimum wage in Oregon is?
$10.75.
Exactly. We have 3 minimum wages in Oregon right now. So once you get to the Portland metropolitan area, it's 12, it's $10.75 over in Marion County, and I'm not sure how far back it goes, and I think it's $10.25 on the eastern side. So this is where farm workers get taken advantage of. Most of them don't know that there's 3 minimum wages, and depending where they're working. Sometimes they can be working down in the valley, and they'll bring them up here to the backside of Forest Grove. If they're in the Portland metro area, they need to be paid $12 an hour. One last question. Does everybody know what an H-2A worker is? Well, H-2A workers are people who are being, as we speak, brought out of the country to work here in the United States, to work in agriculture. The H stands for agriculture. The folks are brought in for a term of 6 months, 2 months, depending on the need of the grower. And those folks come in and harvest, and when they're done, they go back home. Next year, if there's contract available, they come back to work in the state or anywhere in the United States, as long as they keep all the paperwork in order. Does anybody know what the minimum wage of an H-2A worker is?
13.
$14.12 when we bring them out of the country to work here. Of course, there's laws now that protect the domestic workers. So if you have workers who come in and are working with the H-2A workers, those workers need to be paid the same as the H-2A workers. And a lot of the employers who bring them in, sometimes they mix them up. They need to be paid the same wage. Domestic workers have a right to those jobs. So basic information for some of you folks, if you run into any issues. Like I said, our employment office here in Oregon City, in Whitburn. We have them in Portland and Gresham also. We are there as a resource. By all means, contact us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Have been.